Alrighty, so I think it's time to tell the stories about the building that I lived in from 1988 to 2016. I was there for 28 years. I think 28 years. Hey, what? 88 to 98, 98 to 2008. Yeah, 28 years. And moved in there when I was 20 in 1988. I was in my 40s when I moved out. At 48, I guess, eh? 28 years, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to tell you this story. Um, the building, the Royal Bank building in Perth where I lived, and I made a video inside the building not too long ago. So if you want to know about it, if you want to see it, you can reference that video on the 46 Gore Street East, Perth, Ontario, the Royal Bank building. Anyway, the building was as an elderly woman who lived in there and was a mystic. She was a Greek Orthodox person and she was a mystic. It was what she called demonically infested. The building was, there were demonic spirits in it. There's no other way to put it. I know some people don't believe in that stuff. Some people are going to think I'm crazy for saying that such a thing exists. But if you had had some of the experiences I had, you'd realize that there's something to it. And not only that, but it isn't just the experiences I had. A lot of people who lived in that building had similar experiences. And we used to talk sometimes. I remember having conversations with neighbors about things that were happening, things that happened in their apartments and stuff like that. And anyway, I had a couple of real extreme situations in my apartment. I was actually hit by an unseen hand. I actually had a clown with a melting face appear to me and pull a gun on me and pull the trigger, and the gun went click. And then the clown started laughing hysterically and said, "You're dead," and vaporized, basically. I was even attacked by a demon in my bed, and Rocky came to my rescue. It was actually Rocky that saved me from that demon. So I'll tell you the stories anyway. Lots of weird things had happened there. And our landlord in that building was, well, he was a sadist and he was a psychopath. And I know the elderly woman in the building, the mystic, she had said that he was drawing this stuff in. Plus, she had said there was a lot of bad things that happened in that building. There had been murders, there had been a lot of drug abuse and alcohol abuse, a lot of violence, a lot of negativity had occurred there, which is true. I know in the time I was there was a lot of negativity occurred there. And I also know that, I know a little of the history of the building, so I know that there's been a lot of negativity over the years. Not that everything was negative, but the building was built in 1911, and in its long history, you can imagine there's like, I think there's 14 apartments in there. So you can imagine 14 apartments over a period of nearly 100 years. You can imagine that there was quite a bit of, nearly 100 years when I moved in, over 100 years when I moved out. You can imagine there was quite a bit of stuff had happened in there, all kinds of stuff, and anything you can think of had happened there at one time or another. Anyway, when I was in my early 20s, I got the pneumonia, and my doctor refused to treat me, and I nearly died. And when I finally got a doctor who would treat me, and I got on some really serious antibiotics and got the poison cleared out of my system, of course my lungs were damaged, and they still are damaged, and I couldn't lay down flat. If I laid down flat, I couldn't breathe. I'd wake up choking. So I was sleeping on my couch in my living room, and I propped myself up with pillows, and that's how I was surviving anyway. And yeah, so I was that's how I was sleeping anyway, propped up on pillows on my couch in the living room, with the pillows up against the arm of the couch to hold them up. And that's how I was sleeping. And I slept like that for about 3 years before I could sleep in a bed again. It was pretty bad. I suffered quite a bit at that time. I was in a lot. I was in agony. You know, I was suffering terribly. But anyway, one night I opened my eyes. It was around 2 or 3 in the morning, and at the end of my couch by my feet, I see this character look sort of like Pennywise the Clown, if you ever seen Pennywise the Clown from the Stephen King, you know, from that Stephen King, that movie based on a Stephen King novel. Looked a lot like that, like a real old-time, old-fashioned clown. Only its face was all messed up. It was like its face was melting or something, or melted. It was an awful sight anyway. And it was standing in front of me. And when I opened my eyes, it raised its right arm straight out, and it was holding a pistol. And it pulled the trigger of the pistol. Now I went right back up onto the end of the couch, right up onto the pillows. Like, it really frightened me. I was like right up as far as I could get on the couch, away from this thing without being off the couch. It raised its right arm anyway, pointed this pistol at me, and it pulled the trigger. And when it pulled the trigger, the gun just clicked. It didn't actually fire. And then it said, "Bang! You're dead!" And then it started to do this really maniacal laugh, and then it just faded away. Anyway, as you might imagine, that kind of frightened me. Over the years, I had different, less dramatic experiences too. They weren't all really big like that. I know when I got Rocky and Muella, the two cats, brother and sister, you know, of course I still have Rocky, they used to quite often go to the center of the living room, and they'd be sniffing like they were sniffing somebody's feet, and then they'd recoil away from whatever it was. You know, that was something that they both used to do. And then when I got Barney 4 years later, so now I had the 3 of them, Rocky, Moo, and Barney, and all 3 of them used to do that sometimes. Act like they were sniffing at somebody's feet in the room, somebody I couldn't see, and then they just kind of back away, and you could tell that they were upset anyway. And I used to see them do that. And you know, I remember one time I woke up in the middle of the night in my bedroom, and there was an ugly red face up in the corner at the far end of the room. And when I woke up, I saw this face up in the corner at the far end of the room. And what it did is it went this way, and then it went back this way, and it disappeared. It went this way, it disappeared. And I remember seeing that. But the time that Rocky saved me from a demon, this is quite a thing. Anyway, I was in my bed. Rocky was in the bed with me. I don't know if Muella was in the bed or not. I don't think I had Barney yet. But Rocky was in the bed with me, for sure. Anyway, I went to sleep. And where my bed was, it was about 1.5 feet away from one of the old-fashioned hot water radiators. When you walked into my room, it was a long, narrow room. My bed was here. So you went for the door. Okay, my bed was just to the right. And there was just enough space on each side of the bed that you could walk between the wall and the bed, basically. Well, there was more space on one side of the bed because I had some furniture there. I had a chest of drawers, and I had a TV stand and some other, and a television and that sort of thing there. But anyway, on the other side, though, there was maybe 1.5 feet between the bed and the hot water radiator, maybe 2 feet from the bed to the wall, you know. Anyway, and there were the old-fashioned cast iron hot water radiators, you know, the things that stood on feet basically, and it was they were as old as the building, and the building was built in 1911, so they were the heavy old radiators anyway, and that was to heat the building. Well, of course, our landlord had turned off our heat at one point for 2 years, but that's another story anyway. I don't want to get waylaid here, but he had. And I went to war with him over it. But back to my story anyway. I went to sleep. Now, if I was laying in my bed, the door to my room would have been just past the foot of the bed and to the left. And the wall with the radiator was to the right. And then there was a big window on each side of the bed, you know. Anyway, I fell asleep, and I had this dream, and in the dream I was getting the crap knocked out of me. I mean, I was taking a beating, and I couldn't fight back because I couldn't see what was attacking me. It was in the dream. It was all dark, just total darkness. But every so often, something would just land me a real wallop, you know, just hit me across the head or whatever, you know. And I couldn't see it. And I couldn't fight back, really. I couldn't even see what was attacking me. But I was really taking a beating. And I woke up because Rocky was growling. It was actually Rocky growling that woke me up, the sound of him growling. And when I woke up, I had rolled over on my side, on my right side, so I was facing the radiator. And Rocky had positioned himself on the bed between me and the radiator. And Rocky had his back all arched and his tail straight up in the air, and all his fur was standing up. And he had his lips curled back, and you could see all of his teeth. And he's growling, like ferociously. His ears were back, pinned right to the back, pinned right down to his head. And he was growling. He was quite ferocious. And it was his growling that woke me up. He had actually put himself between me and the radiator. Now, here's the thing. On the radiator, there was a red circle. It'd be it'd be a little bigger than a dinner plate. If you just a regular dinner plate you'd have in your house, this red circle would have been a little bigger than that. And so there's this red circle, and Rocky is staring at this thing, and he's growling. And he's like, you know, you better get moving, whatever you are, you know. And he's growling anyway, and it was the growling that woke me up. Well, when I woke up, I saw the red circle. I saw Rocky in the state he was in. I saw the red circle that Rocky was staring at and growling. And then the red circle just disappeared. So I believe that I was attacked by a demon that night anyway. Now, moving ahead a few years, in 2016, when I was leaving the building, when I put in my notice and I was going to move out of the building and move into the house that I was going to rent from my boss, the auctioneer, I'm laying in bed in the evening, just watching television after work. I had worked all day, and I'd come home, and I was tired. And I was just laying on my bed watching the TV, and something come. And again, I didn't see it. Rocky was laying on top of me too. He was doing the thing he does, where he gives you head boops and he purrs and rubs his head against your face and all that. He was doing all that. Anyway, something come and landed me a good punch in the testicles. I mean, like really hit me hard, right in the testicles. Now, there was nobody around. There was nobody. Rocky was laying on my chest. It wasn't him that did it. And there was nobody. And I don't know where Muella or Barney were, but they weren't around. It's not like they had jumped on me and caused that or anything. They weren't in the room. And anyway, but yeah, I remember that though, taking a punch. And I had also been pushed a few times, and I had also been slapped. I had been slapped across the face by an unseen hand. More than once that had happened. It spun my head right around, And yeah, it was pretty bad anyway. It was a pretty rough place. But anyway, these were just some of the things that excuse me. Some of the things that happened anyway. When I was a little boy, there was a man killed in the apartment next door to my apartment. Well, the apartment that I ended up moving into when I was 20. Wasn't my apartment yet. But I remember my dad having a good laugh about the stupid perf police. And he was telling the story, and I remembered hearing the story because I overheard my dad talking to another man about it. And what had happened is, in apartment number 7, which was the apartment next door to my apartment, there was a couple living in there. This was in their early 70s. The man came home from work unexpectedly. And when he opened the door, he heard the festivities occurring in the bedroom. His wife was in there with some other man. And of course, when he walked into the apartment and he heard that, he knew what was going on. Well, he took a knife out of a kitchen drawer and he went into the bedroom and he plunged the knife into the guy. The guy was on top of his wife. They were having sex and the guy was on top of her. Well, he plunged the knife into the man. And of course, the man collapsed on top of the woman, of this guy's wife. And then he went to the telephone and he called the perf police. And he told them the story. He said, I come home, caught my wife in bed with another man, and I've just stabbed the guy. And now he's laying dead in the bed on top of my wife. Well, they didn't believe it. And they just laughed and said, yeah, sure you did. Just sober up, you'll feel better in the morning. And they hung up on him. Well, he called them back. And he said, no, really, I'm telling you the truth. This thing that I just told you about, it really did happen. The guy's in my bed right now, dead. Like I've run him through with a knife. I'm not kidding. Well, again, they just said, yeah, whatever. Look, buddy, you just need to sleep it off. You've had a little too much. And you just need to sleep it off. Please don't call here again telling us stories like that. Just to sleep it off. You'll be okay. To sleep it off, buddy. And they hung up on him again. Well, then I guess they got the thinking and they thought, well, maybe we should go up and check it just in case. Who knows? Aren't we going to look silly if it turns out to be a real thing? Which, of course, it did turn out to be. So then they did go up. And sure enough, the guy's wife is standing there and she's covered in blood. They found the dead man in the bed. He was, he'd been stabbed to death, stabbed in the back, like the man had said he had done to him. Anyway, because that was a case of, he came home and caught this guy in bed with his wife and everything. He ended up, he got manslaughter. He got convicted for manslaughter, and I think he served 12 years. I think that was 12 years he got. Anyway, there was a couple moved into that apartment next door to me, number 7, and I knew them. They had actually lived in the building before, and then they had moved, they had moved from one apartment to another is what they'd done. So they had lived underneath me, and now they were living beside me. And I knew these people anyway. Well, one day I'm out on the fire escape, and the lady come out, that lady next door to my apartment, she came out, and she was having a smoke out there. And I was talking to her, and I said to her, I said, now I hope you won't think that I'm crazy or strange or anything for asking this, because I said it may sound really weird, but I said, I really need to know. I said, have you ever had any weird experiences, like anything that you just can't explain in this building? Like paranormal type stuff. And I said, I'm asking for a reason. I said, because I've had some weird experiences, and I'm just kind of wondering if you've ever had any weird experiences. And I was afraid she was going to say, like, you're a loony. Like you need to go to a mental health professional or something, or get on some medication or something, because there's obviously something wrong with you. But that's not what she did. As soon as I said that, she said, oh my God, yes. And then she starts telling me this story. And she said when she's laying in her bed, sometimes she feels a weight on her, and like she's being crushed, and she can't breathe, and she can't get up, like she can't move, she can't breathe, she can't get up, and she just feels this crushing weight on top of her. Well, I didn't have the heart to tell her what I knew about the history of that apartment, because I figured that would freak her right out. It's better that I don't tell her that. So I didn't. But when you think about it, though, that woman who was cheating on her husband, when her husband came in and stabbed her boyfriend, and the boyfriend fell down dead on top of her, just collapsed on top of her like that, that would have been what she experienced with the weight of his body on top of her. That's probably how it felt to her, like a crushing weight and not being able to breathe and all that. Plus, she was probably having a lot of anxiety because her husband had just caught her with another man, and he had just murdered that other man on top of it. And now she had the corpse of this guy that she had been screwing around with, on top of her. I would imagine that she was experiencing some anxiety. So again, that would affect your breathing. And that would cause you to feel panicked, and it would affect your breathing and so on. That's on top of having the weight of the guy on her. Anyway, this lady, she told me, she said, I've had that experience. But like I say, I never told her the story. I never told her what I knew about that apartment, because I thought that's going to be just too much. I better not do that. Excuse me. Anyway, there were people that had different stories. There was one guy that said he and his wife used to see a little girl in their apartment quite often. There'd be a little girl just wandering around the apartment sometimes, and they would see her. And they weren't scared of her or anything. It wasn't like a scary thing, but it was just a thing, They kind of learned to live with her, I guess, with this little girl that would wander around in their apartment. And anyway, there's all different stories like that of things that happened in that building. But yeah, Anyway, like I say, over the years, I had quite a few experiences there because I lived there for 28 years. So when you live in a place for nearly 30 years that has those kinds of things going on in it, you have lots of opportunity to experience things like that. And you also have lots of opportunity to speak with people who have experienced other things, And sometimes I get talking to the neighbors, and if I felt like it was fairly safe to ask them, if I kind of feel them out a bit and see, and oftentimes I would get these stories. I don't think anybody ever told me I was crazy because of it, because anybody who lived there, even if they weren't really a believer in that stuff, they still seemed to know that there was something off there. And so even people who wouldn't normally admit to believing in that stuff uh, were open at least to the possibility that maybe I wasn't crazy, based on their own experiences and based on their feelings when they were in the building, some of the weird feelings they get and so on like that. Anyway, that's just a little story about the hauntings or the demonic activity in the building that I lived in Perth, Ontario, Canada for 28 years. All right. Oh, wait a minute. Before we go, we should see. Oh, we'll fire up the patented Rocky Cam again. The patented Camp Crazy Rocky Cam. I'm not sure what you're able to see, but we'll just do this here and see. Yeah, anyway, hopefully I got him on film. He's a wonderful wee fella. And that's it. We'll talk to y'all later. Remember, stay away from demonically infested places if you can. My goodness. Yeah, pretty wild. All right, yeah. I'm kind of glad to be out of that building. Okay, bye for now.